evening. Welcome to The Pipeline. I'm Cory Morgan, hosting this weekly panel show with the Western Standard, where we break down a number of the top issues for the week and news stories and, save you from having to think about and digest it. We'll think for you. Just tune in, keep watching this. We'll tell you what you got to interpret out of all of that. And this panel of luminaries I have before you today, a little different than usual. It's usually Derek in this spot. Usually Nigel's here. Instead, we've got the opportunity to get a couple of the irregular group to come on. At the end of the table there is Dave Naylor, our news editor.
Nice to be here under some hot lights because it's friggin' cold outside.
That's right. We'll start getting that deeper thaw in. We really got a taste of winter lately. And our business, energy, and general reporter Shaun Polczer here on my right.
Hey, Cory, it's been a little while.
It has been. It's been forever since Shaun's been on the broadcast end of things. People have missed his pretty face. I'm sure that the fan mail has
Good
been
to be an irregular.
Irregular, yes. Well, we could talk about regularity on a different show. It's a different sponsor. So before I get going on, I'll talk about a more important sponsor. And this episode of The Pipeline is sponsored by New World Precious Metals, and they're based right here in Alberta. Years of inflationary money printing and rising debt have decimated the average Canadian savings. Gold and silver are the only currencies that have held their value for actually thousands of years. Last year saw 30% gains. NWPM offers unique platforms to help protect and grow your hard-earned wealth with gold and silver. Check them out, guys, newworldpm.com. And look at that. Gold lately actually has been doing incredible out there. Plus, people have really been thinking about buying local. Well, you can beat both. These guys are a local company, and they'll get you your gold and silver so you can hedge against that Canadian peso. All right, so let's get on to other issues. And it was hard to find things to talk about today. It's been such a quiet news month, hasn't it? So, Dave, let's start.
Let's start. Where to begin?
Trump tariffs. We've gained a little reprieve.
Yes, it was. We were all working the weekend because the threat was there that Monday morning they were going to be announced, and the whole country was on tenterhooks on Monday, and all of a sudden the news came that Mexico was getting a break. They were sending 10,000 soldiers to the northern border, and they get a reprieve of 30 days. So we're of course saying, hey, if Mexico gets it, why not us? And then the news finally broke in the afternoon that Canada was also getting a 30-day reprieve. We had to make some concessions, like we were going to send 10,000 people to patrol the border. We have to appoint a border czar, something which Danielle Smith was promoting, which we can talk about later, and all sorts of other stuff to crack down on fentanyl. So we've got 30 days to get our crap together, and in 30 days we'll be facing another deadline, and the country will again be on tenterhooks.
Well, I noticed that he made the announcement while the Tampa Bay Lightning are in the White House celebrating the Stanley Cup win. And he didn't even make any demand. Oh,
Florida Panthers, my friend.
Panthers. Oh my God, I got it wrong. But he didn't even make any demands to take over McDavid.
This is why you're an irregular.
Well, we'll get more into your area of specialty. Actually, I'm wondering how much impact do you think? I mean, the American markets that morning weren't exactly happy with this tariff idea. I mean, Trump may seem to think it's wise economic policy, but most business people and economists don't think terribly highly on it. You think, the American market, I mean, it rebounded once the tariffs were, it was announced that they're going to be put off. How much impact do you think that might have had on Trump's thinking? I know it's hard to figure what impacts Trump's thinking, but I could.
Well, the irony is that it wouldn't actually be Canadian producers that would be paying the tariff. It would actually be the American refiners. And we're talking about, so 60% of U.S. imported oil comes from Canada, 99% from Alberta. But of that oil, about 80% of it is funneled to maybe a half dozen refineries in the West Midwest that aren't really pipeline connected. America doesn't really have any pipelines to the West Coast. Almost, if they were to try to get oil up and around, they'd have to go through the Panama Canal. If they were going to bring oil in from Venezuela, they would have a heck of a time trying to get it up into Toledo, just simply because of the fact that the main pipeline is Canadian. So it's actually the U.S. refineries that would be paying this 10% toll, and it would hurt them a heck of a lot more than it would hurt us, which is probably number one why he lowered it down to 10% in the first place, and then number two on this 30-day reprieve.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's kind of claiming a victory out of this one. Trump is saying, well, I got what I wanted for now. I got the concessions on the border security and things such as that. Trudeau supporters are saying, look, Justin pulled it through in the 11th hour. And Daniel Smith supporters are saying, well, it's because of Smith's diplomacy that Trump softened up and saw the light here. Was there a victory in this? Or, I mean,
Well, I think certainly Danielle Smith can claim a victory, getting the tariffs reduced to 10%. And she invested a lot of personal capital going down there and meeting Trump at Mar-a-Lago and, sort of smoozing her way through Washington and visiting their senators and Congress people. So, she was called a traitor, and now some people are claiming victory is hers. I guess it's all going to depend on what happens in 30 days. And she's certainly continuing her full court press. She will make 2 trips to Washington in the next month. There's, I think, 3 cabinet ministers, UCP cabinet ministers, going down for the national prayer breakfast in Washington. Not sure why they're sending 3, but it's nice to take when the weather's this cold, it's nice to get out of Dodge and go anywhere,
DC's
I
been
guess.
pretty cold.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Trudeau can claim a bit of victory because you have seen him surging a little bit in the polls. And, I think Canada as a whole can claim a bit of a victory because you've seen a reawakening of patriotism that hasn't been there for a while. You've got the American national anthem being booed at hockey games and basketball games, which I don't necessarily agree with. And it's going to make the upcoming Four Nations hockey going to be even more interesting when Canada plays the U.S. because it's a bitter battle already. So it should be good. So I think Smith is the big winner out of all this.
well, she got that czar as well. That the ever increasingly unhinged Andrew Coyne, for example, called her Premier Loon for asking for that, and now suddenly it's a brilliant idea when the federal government brings in that position. Uh,
Well, it kind of plays into this idea of creating a provincial police force as well, right? Because now they've actually got something to do.
true. Another aspect. There's been a lot of. It's driven me nuts as a libertarian-minded person too, and a lot of economic illiteracy on both sides of the border. And Trump sure likes to play on that, like something that he's not done. And he keeps trumpeting, we're subsidizing Canada by the hundreds of billions because of the trade deficit. And it's not a subsidy. It's not even close to a subsidy. But, perhaps if you could lay that out, because he doesn't seem to be backing off on that yet. Like, there's going to be more demands at the end of the month. And where is he going to go next with this supposed subsidy?
Well, I think it was an American economist yesterday made this comparison that the grocery store doesn't buy as much from me as I buy from them.
Yeah.
And he turns around and Premier Smith has made this comment as well. He turns around, he buys about $100 billion worth of oil and turns it into $300 billion worth of products simply because of discount between Canadian and American oil prices. And a lot of that is a function of the lack of pipelines that go east and west. And so now we've had this talk of reviving these pipelines out to the East Coast and maybe even Northern Gateway, which, I mean, it's a day late, dollar short. If we would have had these things up and running 5-10 years ago when they were proposed, then we would be in this position that we're in now.
Yeah, well, I see Wilkinson coming up talking about the importance of diversifying our export markets. Now, people have suddenly understood that, when you've got a business and you've only got one customer, you're actually in a really, really bad position. Even Quebec Premier Legault got up and said, yes, this is very important, but then quickly said, but there's no damn way we're letting a pipeline through Quebec.
Well, I think what he said was, it seems to me that he might be somewhat in favor of the idea, but he was just trying to brush it off as trying to say that there's no social acceptability.
I don't care about social acceptance.
He was. Yeah, I think you wrote the column yesterday that he was. He was shown to be the traitor in the Team Canada dressing room.
Was your
Uh,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're either Team Canada or you're not Team Canada, and I don't think he wants any part of Team Canada. No, I don't blame him for that. He wants to look out what's best for his province. Uh, there were people saying, "Well, why don't we build a pipeline to Ontario and then ship it to the East Coast refineries?" Um, but there's certainly from the comments and whatnot yesterday that we got on Shaun's column, a lot of anger out there at that stance. Um, are we going to be self-sufficient or are we not? And if we're going to be self-sufficient, we need a damn pipeline through Quebec.
Well,
right?
we need one that doesn't go through the United States and then back up into Ontario.
That too, yeah. Which is again, you talk about vulnerability. Here's this mean line, guys. It goes down
It's
there
our oil.
and comes up. Like we are on the hook with him. Trump is the latest, the one in power right now, who's pretty protectionist, but he won't be the last president like that. And as you said, Quebec's looking out for Quebec, which is fair enough. I'm big on Alberta looking out for Alberta. But I think it's in Quebec's interest to have a strong Canadian economy so they can still keep pilfering equalization payments from us. So, I mean, if they keep castrating our ability to make money, they will lose their Putin funds eventually.
Well, I think there was also some irony, in that Premier Smith was called the traitor in the Team Canada locker room. Even the Prime Minister had used the Team Canada analogy and all this kind of thing. And I don't think anybody ever really expects Quebec to kind of be on the team, but to kind of go to the extent that they did. We're essentially blocking oil from the maritime provinces.
Yeah. I'm looking at if we've got a loser in all this, it may be Doug Ford. He called an election on these tariffs, and they are now no longer coming. He rips up $100 million contract with Elon Musk to provide
He taped
Starlink.
it back together.
So he's got to take that. Sorry.
And then
Elon,
there's the hot
kidding.
mic comments.
Yeah, all the hot mic comments, and I think Elon Musk's response to Ford cutting canceling the $100 million deal was, "Oh well," 2 words, like drop in the bucket for him.
He carries that in his wallet. That's the credit limit on his card.
And 10 seconds worth of runtime.
I felt sorry for all these Eastern liquor store owners who spent the day taking all the American booze off their shelves and putting it away, and now they had then that night, Monday night, they have to go back in and put them all back on again.
Well, and to be fair, I understand some of the need for some of the posturing. I mean, you can't just take it laying down. This was a pretty nasty shot at Canada and threat with us. Well, got to show somewhere, we will try how we can to reduce our consumption of your products, and then some of the most visible are, liquor, bourbon. I mean, switching to rye from bourbon. I mean, I don't drink any longer, but I think I would have sped my path to sobriety if I couldn't gotten hold of bourbon. So again, we're punishing ourselves. But you can see the performative reasons to do those things.
So I guess now the next question is, when will Trudeau appoint the border czar? And what qualifications is he looking for? Do we need a military guy? You look at a guy like Homan in the States. He's rough and tough, and he's wearing the baseball caps, and he's going along on the ice rides, and making threats and all that sort of stuff. So, do you appoint a politician or do you appoint a military guy?
Well, this is Trudeau on the lamest of lame ducks ever seen in the world now. I mean, he's got weeks left on his time as prime minister, theoretically, anyways, assuming he steps aside when Carney's coronated. And should he be, he's going to be appointing friends. It's patronage time. It's time. I just hope that he would think that he's going to leave a legacy with Canada's interest in mind, but he's never really.
Surely he's got to appoint somebody capable. And I wonder how much say the premiers will have. Right, they continue their first minister's talks with Trudeau. I wonder, if each province gets asked to nominate somebody, and Trudeau then picks the best.
Well, I'm wondering if this shouldn't be like a joint command, kind of like with the NORAD, where you have alternated between the Canadian, have just a single unified kind of position as opposed to two separate and distinct offices kind of competing against each other. But there again, that would kind of raise a question of why we have separate border security teams instead of maybe just one.
Well, and a lot of it's a little backwards
Political.
in a way. I mean, it's again, we're dancing to Trump's tune. You kind of have to when you got the elephant, pushing on the door like that. But realistically, it's actually should be more the America's responsibility for border control onto what goes south. I mean, that's the traditional way borders work, and we're responsible for trying to control what's coming north. I mean, we cooperate with each other. If there's a smuggling problem from a part of Canada or something like that, we should work together to stop that or rectify it. Now it's suddenly all on us, and it's all on Mexico to keep the outward flow from going into the States.
Well, and what is coming north, guns, and the amount of drugs that is coming from the north as compared to what's flowing south. I mean, we're talking an order of magnitude.
And everybody's talking about the border, and rightfully so. What about ports? Our ports are some of the leakiest in the world. The Port of Vancouver is known as notorious as easy smuggling territory.
It's controlled by the Hells Angels.
Yeah. So, I mean, somebody suggested, okay, well, you need to send 500 RCMP officers to the Port of Vancouver and look in every container that's coming in, because damn well that the fentanyl is coming in through China, and it's coming in through the Port of Vancouver, I would suggest, largely, and then distributed elsewhere.
Well, you just have to walk through East Hastings
Yeah,
to see,
a substantial consumer market. I mean, and those containers are coming by the tens of thousands. I don't know the volumes. And John Rustad, we listened to him speak recently, pointed out that only 1% of those actually get inspected. And the bulk of them, they land in Vancouver, but then they end up heading south. They go down there. I don't know how much stringent control there is once it crosses the southern border. I guess multiple levels of control would help.
Well, he also pointed out that British Columbia used to have a border, like a port patrol agency, and that the provincial government there, they haven't had one in how long? It's been like almost 20 years.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're
that would give them something to do. They wouldn't have to have a border patrol. They could just have a port authority or something.
if you're looking to smuggle something, the odds are in your favor. If you got a big enough market, hey, I'm going to lose 1 out of 100 shipments. Okay, I'll just spread it out amongst enough containers and we'll be all right.
And the other mode of transportation is railway. That doesn't get inspected at all.
Right.
Right. So if you want to smuggle something from either country, I guess, just put it underneath the train and away you go.
Seattle.
So there's a lot more problems than just the border in the battle to try and stop fentanyl.
Well, that's it. And if that is really what this issue is about, I think we got to look a little harder than just running Black Hawk helicopters up and down the prairies, which is fine. We can see the odd strange trucker in the middle of a wheat field trying to cross the border or something, but realistically, we got the bigger issues to deal with: the containers, the smugglers themselves. As I pointed out online when Garrettson got up and talked about how most guns are coming from the States, and I reminded him they're coming across at the Akwesasne Reserve. You want to shut a politician up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They are terrified of the Mohawks.
We don't have those here out in the West. We don't have those cross-border reserves.
There's the Blood Reserve in the south, and then down into Browning, Montana with the Blackfoot Reserve. There's a gap between Cardston and the reserve of about 15 kilometers, but they also have some treaty exemptions that do allow, there's some stuff moves down there, but not to the extent like the boats on the river and the Akwesasne. I mean, that's always been known as an organized crime hub and smuggling, but nobody's got the guts to take that one on.
Are we going to stop fentanyl in 30 days? Not a chance. But let's at least try and give it a go and get something organized.
Yeah, well, so that's the latest thing that President Trump has in mind with Canada and ragdolling us. We'll see what comes up before the next deadline hits for us. So he's not just stopping with Canada, though. He's shaken up the world. He's turned his eyes to the Middle East now.
It's a whirlwind what he does, and how quickly his orders are followed. Yesterday, he sparked outrage basically around the world by saying they should just flatten Gaza, remove all the Palestinians. Didn't say where they should go, but he said in the past Jordan and Egypt, and turn the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Mideast. It's got some nice beaches. It's nice warm Mediterranean Ocean. You can see Trump casinos and golf courses and luxury retirement homes there. But as we say, there's some problems. What to do with the Palestinians? He's got the deportation flights have begun to Guantanamo Bay. He was just musing about it a couple days ago, and now they're already down there by uh, by the hundreds. He has left, I guess, a letter that he wants Iran obliterated off the map if they are successful in assassinating him. There has been a couple of Iranian-based plots that have been busted in the United States. So he will nuke the hell out of Iran if they're successful in assassinating him. He's reinforced tariffs on Iran. Shaun can talk more about that with the oil. He's got Kennedy passed as his health czar. Pam Bondi just earlier this morning getting in his new AG. Every time he opens his mouth, it's a news story. There's like 5 or 6 news stories coming out of every press conference. It's just hard to keep track. And you look at the energy of the man compared to Biden. Biden was weekend at Bernie's, sleepwalking, and Trump is just a whirlwind. So, lots to talk about on Trump's week already, and it's only 3 days in.
Well, he's giving a press conference. He's given more press conferences last week than Biden gave during his whole entire term, or even Obama for that matter. But so yeah, he's a whirlwind.
Well, and Iran, kind of getting back to that for starters. I mean, that's been a thorn in the developed civilized world's side since, the 70s and the Shah coming in and ongoing with them. The reason, though, the world puts up with so much from that Islamist bunch of lunatics is they're also the third biggest producer of oil in the Middle East.
Right.
If they do get heavy sanctions or tariffs really applied on them, that's really going to affect the world oil markets.
Well, and this is the story that I was actually working on this morning before I came in. It's up on the board, just about ready to go. He's not sanctioning Iranian oil per se. What he's doing is he's removing the exemptions from the countries that buy the Iranian oil. So that would be China, India, Turkey, even some European Union countries like Spain and Italy, Japan, South Korea. So now we're kind of widening this sanctions net. And in response, China has put on sanctions, or not sanctions, but tariffs, their own tariffs on imported American oil and coal and LNG. And so there's some talk that it might even restrict the number of new LNG projects that are going to the Gulf of Mexico, because we know the U.S. has been going gangbusters on LNG. Well, Canada here, we're struggling to get our one. It's a pretty substantial project, but I mean, it's been on the books for years, and it's finally looking to start up here later on this spring. But I mean, like in the interim, the U.S. has had like a dozen of these things going through the Gulf of Mexico. Right? So I don't know. So we'll see what goes on. The oil price is actually down this morning, so
down 1% on opening, something.
Yeah, something like that. About $1.50.
Yeah. And so again, there's just so much to cover. And then Gaza, so he's rattling the chain, but we're really seeing a pattern, I think, with Trump too, though. I mean, he just wants to get in and stir the hell out of everything, and then he can really get some concessions when he. I mean, I don't. It's hard to read anything into Trump, but to try and figure out his motivations. But with Gaza, I mean, he knows enough to know, like, you can't just dump them out of there. If you're, I mean, as tempting as it sounds fine to me. I'd love the concept of a Riviera. Let Egypt and Jordan have their little theocracies with a bunch of those loony Palestinians running around. But I think he's shaking their chain,
destabilizing everything else,
similar to Canada 51st and all that too, which he knew was never going to happen. But boy, it sure gets the ants running around, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you've seen the footage of Gaza. Looks like every single building is being flattened. The place is unlivable, which he points out. So it's the whole Gaza Strip is a demolition site, Trump says. So, I mean, what do you do? It's going to be one of the world's greatest rebuilding projects, I guess, after along with the Ukraine, if
It's
they
going
ever
to
get
be
that.
almost a Marshall Plan.
Yeah. Um, so, I mean, where do you put the Palestinians while you're rebuilding the Gaza Strip? If it's
We
not
do
taken,
know how
right?
these work because we've been through that with Israel. Every time some idiot in the Arab nation attacks them and loses, they sit in tents for a decade or so. It gets rebuilt. They put in terror tunnels and then they punch themselves in the balls again. But maybe this time, supervise the rebuilding. Don't let them pull the water pipes out of the ground and make rocket launchers out of them. Don't let them build terror tunnels. Sorry, guys, you kids misbehaved. You can have your little area, but we're not leaving you on your own to turn it into another hotbed of terrorism. That's enough. I'm just, that's my thinking. But, Trump's approach to things is okay, we're starting the line at we're going to kick every one of you out of there and I'm going to turn it into a little Middle Eastern Las Vegas. And eventually, when he negotiates it back, it might be something perhaps a lot more controlled like that. Okay, we'll let you stay, but here's the conditions.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. They're not they're not going to be allowed to rebuild Hamas or rebuild tunnels or stuff like that. So it's got to be tightly controlled, whatever they do. Israel keeping a close eye on them, and because we don't want any more October 7th, do we?
No, and then we still got our local Fruit Loops that never seem to calm down. Toronto, just the other night, they were all out there screaming death to Israel and waving Palestinian flags and all. Is that ever going to end? I mean, the outside Palestine supporters, there's nothing that's going to satisfy them shy of the obliteration of Israel, which isn't happening. So how are we ever going to deal with that?
Well, you know what? Maybe Trump's ordered the Palestinian supporters who are just visiting the states to be kicked out. So maybe when our Eastern students see that, they may they're safe in Canada,
Yeah.
right? Well,
Look how long it took to get rid of that idiot out in BC with all his convictions.
Right.
Years.
So until we get a new prime minister, they're pretty safe in Canada. It's going to be interesting to see. I can't remember the last time there was a pro-Palestinian demonstration in the States since Trump got elected.
Or even Calgary, really. The Calgary police whipped them off the road really fast. They didn't let them set up a camp in University of Calgary. It's amazing when you actually crack down on these clowns that they disappear. And in Toronto, when you appease them, they grow.
Minus 30 helps.
That helps too.
Yeah, I don't think people
It
are
helps
gonna
in
be
protests in general.
camping out at
But
the
that didn't stop
University
the
of
truckers
Calgary.
convoy one. These are,
Yeah, it's true. Well, they had nice heated cabs.
yeah, there's always an excuse. It's not a tent city. I mean, getting back to those deportations. So this is I'd say troubling though when Trump's talking about sending deportees to Guantanamo. That's when we're getting into some human rights violations. I mean, I understand wanting to send deported Colombians to Colombia and twisting their arms. Hey, they're your people. They're your problem. Bloody well take them. Fine. But dropping them in Guantanamo, which is kind of that gray area, black
May
zone.
never be seen again.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, is this? I don't know.
Well, are these people criminals? Like that was the whole thing even back then with the terrorists. Like you said, it was kind of a gray area. And there's this image of Guantanamo as kind of being lawless. So the idea here is that they're supposed to be rounding up people that are illegally in the U.S. But is that a kind of a cause? Is that a proportionate thing to dump them all in CIA holding pens and orange outfits?
Interesting. Yesterday, Venezuela offered to take any prisoners that they wanted deported. Right, and I don't know if you've seen the inside of that jail in El Salvador. I'm sorry, El Salvador, not Venezuela. I don't know if you've seen the inside of that prison, but it looks.
It's in San Salvador, I think. Yeah, it's like a little city within it's a bizarre, huge.
And it's got thousands and thousands of gang members in there, and the leadership in El Salvador says, "Hey, you want to send prisoners our way? We'll take them." And they said, "We'll even take American citizens and throw them in the slammer down here." So that's probably got.
And then what do you got to do? Pay them?
I think you pay them to
a little cottage industry for El Salvador. I mean,
little room and board.
Turn them into prison colonies.
No, it's
Australia.
Yeah, and I just can't believe the speed that everything's moving at since Trump took office.
He's got everybody on their heels, and I like how he set the precedent with Colombia. Though these are non-citizens, They're your friggin' people. Don't you dare say you can't take them back. You know, you deal with them. We're done. But that can be applied to any country. It should, you know.
He
Can
was-
be
he
applied
was-
to Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
He was dealing with them from the golf courses he was playing around. All right, they don't want 50%, no, 25% tariffs, 50% next.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
even the
these,
Canadian
you
tariffs,
know.
he signed them from Mar-a-Lago. He's on the course.
Yeah.
I mean,
From the golf course.
you know, and we got to learn from these things. Like, look, how long did it take us to get rid of Charles Ng?
Oh, 9 years.
For people who aren't as aged as us, you know, he was a sick Californian mass murderer who I think you broke that, didn't you? It
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
big
I was
story.
covering it
You
back
broke
in
that story.
the 80s. Arrested during the Calgary Stampede after shooting a security guard down at the Bay. Yeah, it was 8 or 9 years until we could get rid of him because they kept appealing and appealing and appealing.
Wasn't he in jail here though?
He was in jail.
In jail,
No,
but
no,
why-
no. He was on the run
Yeah.
in Canada,
Yeah.
and he was arrested in I think it was 1985 during the Stampede.
Living
He
in
was
Fish Creek
he was-
Park.
Yeah, he was living in Fish Creek Park. But he was jailed in Canada for years and years and years until we could get him out back to California. Now he's on death row in San Quentin, I think.
Is he still
Oh
on death
no,
row?
you know what? He's not, because one of the deals to get him back was we would
They
take
commuted his death
they
sentence.
would commute a death sentence. So
I mean-
yeah, he's still in San Quentin.
Yeah, but I mean, if we can't get rid of somebody as awful as him in a timely manner, how are we ever going to get rid of somebody who's, in my view, still okay? He did 3 burglaries and he doesn't have citizenship. My view, well, out of here. We can't even get rid of murders though.
Well, that's
Change
what
the
we
law.
should be doing.
Change the law. Right? You don't have a liberal government in power. You change the law and you get it done.
Well, I wonder, you know, that's speculation. How closely is I mean, it's most likely we're going to see Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre within 12 months' time. Who knows? I mean, the world's gone so insane. I'm not putting anything in the bank. But is he watching Trump? Is he seeing, you know, how much of this can I do in my first year in power? Or is he going to try the usual Canadian quiet incremental recipe for failure?
It's going to be interesting because today in Vancouver, he had a press conference and he said he would give life sentences to fentanyl kingpins. Very Trump-like, I think,
Mhm.
isn't it? So obviously, we're a different country, and when Poilievre, if he becomes prime minister, he can't just sign executive orders all day from. Does the Canadian Prime Minister's office have a name?
PMO.
The PMO and the Privy
PMO.
Council kind of is tied in there, and that's part of cabinet.
But interestingly, there was a poll released yesterday, and it's just the one poll that showed the Liberals ahead in Ontario again, which is concerning. But yeah, I mean, Poilievre's got to be looking at Trump and thinking, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, that's a good idea.
Well, you know,
But then he's obviously going to be hamstrung.
well, the thing that struck me is that Trump is probably his biggest problem. You know what I mean? Because now he's almost got to come out against some of these things that Trump is doing. Trump is almost kind of undercutting him at the heels. If Trump would come along, then Poilievre was shooing. But now with all this kind of anti-American sentiment and booing at the hockey games and things like that, it's like you said, it seems to be Trudeau has gone up for the first time in almost 2 years, right? So Trump almost seems to be working against him. Like, how do you counter that?
As a guy, who wrote a book on Alberta's sovereignty, it warms the cockles of my heart to think of Eastern Canada putting the Liberals back in these circumstances, because I'll have a bestseller. But in reality, I mean, is that really what's going to happen? I mean, we'll kind of segue into the next one. I mean, the unity issues, the Canadian differences, kind of back to Quebec again. I mean, that's the risk Poilievre has now. He's really straddling. I mean, everybody's kind of agreeing we need to diversify our energy sources, but Quebec's saying no. And the only thing that scares politicians more than First Nations people are Frenchmen.
Separatists.
Is Poilievre going to be ready to take on a unity battle in Quebec?
He may not have a choice. He may not have a choice. We talked about it earlier, but everybody's saying, okay, we must become energy independent. We must become it. And Legault throws up his hands and says no. We were talking earlier today, Shaun, about Kitimat finally coming online and increased opportunity for Canadian LNG sales.
Yeah.
Where's that going to come from?
Japan.
Japan.
And also from China, if these tariff, this trade war with Trump escalates, then China would be obviously looking for more Canadian oil and gas, probably even coal, I would think. That could be an unintended consequence of Trump's multiple trade war fronts, not only with us, but also Asia, because on the electric cars, we've got 100% tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, right? Well, if he goes and sanctions the auto industry, what's to stop us from all of a sudden removing those tariffs on Chinese cars and buying $10,000? Let them flood the market with $10,000 EVs, notwithstanding all these subsidies that we have for battery companies.
Yeah, that's a whole issue for another show. That,
Yeah.
But I mean, the world is our oyster if we could just get these products to market. I mean,
Yes.
India has the biggest refinery on the planet, and having another source of feedstock, I'm certain they'd be happy with that, especially if things might go a little off with Iran or things that, Europe again, they came cap in hand, Germany and others saying, can you please supply us with LNG? Trudeau, of course, said, no, there's no business case for it and sent them away. And then they cut a big deal with Qatar.
Right.
We know there's a market for it, but we just can't get it to the coast. I mean, that's the thing is Team Quebec, as you said, it's Team Canada Trader. Are we ever going to get a government with the huevos to tell Quebec this is the way it's going to?
No. If we did, they would just take their ball and go home. Right? Which,
Boy, that's fine by me,
fine by me too.
Maybe it's about time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. The Energy East proposal was not only oil; it was natural gas.
No, what it was converting sections of the natural gas line over
Oh, okay.
to
Understood.
get
Yeah,
the
and
oil
they
out there, and then
construct a
there
little
was some diluents and things that were coming back. See, this is another thing that happens with the heavy oil going down to the States, is because it has to be diluted. So not only do they get the benefit of a cheaper oil price, but they also get all these natural gas liquids that actually have a lot of value. Heavy oil is actually a very valuable commodity because of all the byproducts that you get. So when Premier Smith is saying they take $100 billion worth of oil and turn it into $300 billion worth of stuff, and it allows them to export their own oil at a higher price, like, they are getting by far the most benefit out of it.
Well, it's been
more than we are.
Frustrating to watch the social media discussion, though I understand that's not where you're going to see nuanced talk sometimes. But the ignorance on energy and oil and some of the way things are valued. I saw American people and Canadian people, oh, Alberta's crappy heavy oil is expensive to refine. It's no good anyway.
Well, it is.
it is, but I mean, it also. I mean, if you want diesel, if you want kerosene, if you want Jet B, this is the stuff.
If you want paraffin wax.
Yes. So, I mean, it's got different value-added products than Saudi Arabian light that's going to make a quick, easy gasoline, but don't devalue what this heavy oil provides. And if
they've already sunk a lot of money into building these refineries as well.
Well, that's part of it. And the only other source is if suddenly Canada's not shipping south with heavy oil, well, they're going to have to go knocking on Venezuela's door.
I know none of us like government involvement in business, but is it worth the Alberta government building a refinery? I know it's going to cost $3 or $4 billion.
Refineries are normally at the end use, so they're closer to the consumer markets, right? There was some talk, though, of maybe the Alberta government buying like almost a holding company to buy up all the oil and then resell it to avoid some of these
export tariffs.
Yeah, that's what they were going to do.
One thing with Smith, and it's not just on oil, but with the renewable energy and the power and stuff, like she hasn't exactly done it yet, but she has expressed a willingness to get kind of the government involved in these markets to restructure them. Probably not since Lougheed.
I'm not big on government involvement. I mean, just my thoughts on it. One of the things Smith talked about even before she became premier, though, was always about an energy corridor. I mean, that's something, if the government could just say, okay, we're going to deal with the land, the issues and so on. This is the path. Private markets, now you're going to have to, if you want, this is where you're going to put the pipeline. This is where you're going to put the power transmission line.
Sure.
This is where we will provide the corridor. Other than that, we're not building a pipe. We saw how well the government did Trans Mountain. We're not going to build a refinery, but if you got a pipe to the West Coast or East Coast, maybe there's going to be a reason for a new refinery. But the government's role is just to make sure the industry knows they can get there if they start. They're like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. It's been yanked away so many times. What amount of assurances from the government will it take before they start to put money back into this? We know it's there. The government's got to make sure they can do it.
Yeah, it's almost sort of calling into question Danielle Smith's vow to double oil production.
That's a bit of a pipe dream. But what you're talking about, though,
Pipe dream, I like what you did.
the government regulatory certainty, like when we were in Pritis, the folks from British Columbia, see, a lot of people don't realize that one of the problems is British Columbia is the only province in Canada that does not have land claims treaties with its First Nations. And so what's happening is that the companies are forced to deal with each one's on a tribe by tribe basis. So instead of the government taking responsibility for these things, like you said, these corridors, which have traditionally followed, the rivers, or the highway, right, the Trans-Canada Highway, they've basically abdicated responsibility and left it up to the oil companies to have to deal with these people.
And that's ever shifting.
And oil companies are not social development agencies. Right?
No,
they're businesses.
And they tried with the Coastal GasLink, and look what a nightmare that turned into. Because
That
then you
was
get the
one of the reasons.
goalposts moving. You cut a deal with the Wet'suwet'en, but suddenly the Greenies cut a deal with the hereditary chiefs, which is basically like saying we're going to get a relative of King Charles to come in and interfere with Canadian policy
With their estates.
But again, the government wouldn't get in and say, "Look, this is the law." Yeah, they just said, "Well, sorry guys, just keep trying to negotiate."
Well, didn't we have a story on the land use in British Columbia? Land use.
Oh, probably.
I think it seemed to me within the last few days. But
It's
we have so much stuff on our website.
I know it's. You know what? I've been in the business a long time. I've never seen such a crazy month for news. It just never stops. And then between all the political stuff, you got planes falling out of the sky, and it's just it's a great time to be in the news business.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, and then we're going to get to our parting shots. So before we get to that, I'll just kind of remind everybody, too, the Western Standard.news. Get on there, take out a subscription. As Dave said, the stories are going up like crazy. It's busy. If you want to keep up with things, get on there, take out a subscription. It's only $10 a month, $100 a year. Well worth it, just like a newspaper subscription. It keeps us independent, keeps us rolling. It's important. If you've already subscribed, thank you very much. If you haven't, come on, get on with it. All right, parting shots. We'll start. Dave, what do you got?
If Trump is successful and turns Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, sign me up for my retirement home.
Yeah, nice climate.
On the golf course, 15th hole, please.
Sounds good. I could see if he's just
I don't know.
just watch for those Scud missiles.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna have to have
Course, they got
radar
terrible
on the
anchors.
balcony.
All right, what do you got?
Well, interesting thing in an otherwise dull press conference with Nathan Neudorf yesterday, Minister of Affordability, but also Utilities. So asked them about the tariffs on electricity exports. Like what are we talking about in dollar terms? He's like, oh, about $100,000. $100,000. British Columbia is $5 billion. Quebec is about $10 billion. Even Manitoba is about $1 billion.
This is the electricity that we
send south to Montana. So huge potential opportunities there to expand the market and maybe build out some infrastructure and maybe get somebody else to pay for it.
Maybe he'll cut a deal at the prayer breakfast. That's a separate issue. He'll pray for a better deal over his eggs, Benny, I guess.
Yes.
All right, now I'm going to finish off. Don't forget, folks, it's Super Bowl Sunday this weekend. We got Philadelphia and Kansas, and I can't stand either of them. Kenny Pickett, I just want to see him go down because he doesn't deserve a Super Bowl ring for being a nasty backup quarterback. But again, I'm tired of looking at the cutaways to Taylor Swift every half an hour. But I'll watch the game. I don't know.
Fixes in.
Send me an email. Tell me which one you hate more than the others, and I'll make my bets appropriately, and then it'll turn out the other way because I'm terrible at sports betting.
I would not bet.
Fixes in.
I wouldn't bet against Kansas City.
I wouldn't bet against Taylor Swift.
I think they've got some betting sites that you can bet how many times they'll cut away and show her in this private. And Donald Trump becoming the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a good game. That's it. Really is, and you can't count out Kansas. I mean, God, love them or hate them, they're good. They're bloody good.
Yeah, they are.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thank all of you guys for tuning in. So keep up. There's going to be another episode with Jen on, I think, filling in for Nigel Hannaford. My show, of course, on Wednesdays, and this show coming every Thursday. So keep tuning in. We appreciate you tuning in this time, and we will see you on the next one.